What if your family is not a coincidence, but rather a choice you made long before your birth? According to the renowned American trance medium Edgar Cayce, each soul selects the family that will most profoundly nurture its innermost spiritual learning processes before incarnating, not as a reward but as a challenge. Cayce documented over 14,000 readings, many of which delved into reincarnation, karma, and soul plans. In one of these instances, he stated, "Parents are mirrors, not punishment." Modern researchers like Dr. Jim B. Tuck from the University of Virginia confirm this. Children often recount their past lives with remarkable credibility, including details about their previous families that they could never have learned. What if your most complicated relationship is, in truth, an ancient karmic bond? What if you are meant to heal something within your family that you once initiated? In this video, we will explore deeply how the soul finds a new family, why parents are often our greatest teachers, and why even pain can be a secret mission. If you feel that you are more than your body, then stay. This knowledge could transform how you perceive your family and yourself. Edgar Cayce was often referred to as the sleeping prophet. In deep trance, he answered thousands of questions about health, past lives, and what awaits us after death. Yet one of his most profound insights was this: the soul does not die, it wanders. In over 14,000 documented readings archived by the Association for Research and Enlightenment, Cayce repeatedly spoke of our existence not being a first or a last. Reincarnation is not a fantasy, it is an ancient concept. It was firmly rooted in the Vedic scriptures of India, in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, in the Gnostic Gospels, and even in early Christian teachings. It was only through the Council of Constantinople in 553 AD that it was removed from the official doctrine of the Church. However, Cayce did not view it as punishment, but rather as a loving yet challenging learning process for the soul. He said, "Every incarnation is an opportunity to heal what was previously incomplete. We return to learn, to forgive, to grow, and to love." Our soul's journey is not linear. It is like a mosaic of memories, trials, and choices spanning many lives. And at the heart of this cycle between death and rebirth lies a crucial question: which family will take me in this time? For Cayce, even the choice of our parents is not a coincidence, but part of a larger invisible plan. In the upcoming chapters, you will discover why you were born exactly where you are, and why your family, with all its love, conflicts, and unresolved issues, may be the greatest gift of your soul. What if you chose your parents yourself? Not with your mind, but with your soul. Edgar Cayce was convinced that before each birth, the soul enters a state of conscious decision-making. In a kind of spiritual council, it reviews its past life, recognizes its mistakes, its wounds, its unresolved tasks, and faces a question: where can I grow the most? The answer is rarely comfortable. Cayce described how souls often do not choose the easiest family, but rather the one where they can undergo their greatest learning processes, where old karmic knots can be untied, and where wounds from past lives can be healed through forgiveness. So he said, "You do not come to your parents, you are mirrored by them." The soul is drawn not to external traits, but to vibrations, to specific patterns of consciousness that are familiar to it. The relationship with your mother or father can therefore be so intense or painful, not because it is wrong, but because it is profound, because often what needs healing is embedded there. Modern reincarnation researchers like Dr. Ian Stevenson and Dr. Jim B. Tuck have documented over 2,500 cases in which children could vividly recall previous families, places, and even the causes of their past deaths, often accompanied by a strong emotional connection to their new family. Consequently, the soul chooses not only the parents, but often also specific life conditions, illnesses, losses, poverty, exclusion, not as punishment, but as targeted experiences to transform something, to develop compassion, to understand oneself and others on a deeper level. Thus, every family becomes a mirror, every conflict an invitation, and every birth a conscious step in a much larger soul plan. Why do we often encounter in our family precisely those people who wound us the deepest or shape us the most? Edgar Cayce answered this with a simple principle. Karma binds souls not through punishment, but through experience. And often, it is precisely within families where these connections repeat over many lives. Cayce described how souls find their way back to each other like through magnetism, not by chance but through unresolved stories. A father who was strict and unloving in a past life may return in the next incarnation as a son to experience the same rejection he once caused, not for punishment, but to feel what he previously did not understand. In one reading, Cayce said, "The husband of yesterday will be the brother of today. The daughter of yesterday will become the mother. The roles change, yet the lesson remains." Modern reincarnation research confirms this phenomenon. In documented cases by Dr. Ian Stevenson, children not only remembered past lives but also recalled the roles certain family members played before. Lovers became rivals, enemies turned into parents, and sometimes, as strange as it sounds, a child intuitively senses that it knew its parents long before it was born. Cayce also spoke of so-called soul families, groups of souls that grow together over many incarnations, learning, supporting, or challenging each other. They switch roles but remain connected, and sometimes this connection reveals itself in particularly painful ways. A child that is not accepted, a mother who emotionally rejects her child, a father who disappears. These scenes repeat because they make an inner knot visible, a karmic task. This means that even difficult relationships in your family can contain a deep spiritual bond, a hidden promise from the past. I will help you grow even if it hurts. In truth, every family is not only biologically but energetically connected. And sometimes it takes precisely those who challenge us the most to help us recognize ourselves. Why is the relationship with our parents often the most intense and simultaneously the most complicated? Edgar Cayce was convinced. Parents play a central spiritual role in the development of the soul, not only as educators but as mirrors, catalysts, soul helpers. In his readings, Cayce described that each soul consciously chooses its parents because it wants to experience very specific lessons through them. Aninan. The mother often symbolizes primal trust, emotional closeness, and unconditional love. The father represents structure, self-worth, and the relationship with the outer world. But what if that is precisely what is missing? Cayce suggests that this absence is part of the plan. A child who is not accepted by the mother often learns the painful value of self-acceptance. A father who was never present forces the child to find their own inner strength. Cayce said that where love is absent, space is created for inner growth or for forgiveness. Psychologists like John Bowlby and spiritual teachers like Thomas Hübl confirm today that the imprint of mother and father influences our entire attachment behavior and our spiritual openness. Those who do not experience security as children often long for something greater later on: God, truth, light. And sometimes that longing is the key. The deepest wound becomes the inner gate. Rejection turns into a call for healing. Absence transforms into spiritual yearning. Cayce taught that the soul often chooses this very constellation to learn or teach trust, acceptance, and forgiveness through the parents. A child with particularly high spiritual maturity can even support their parents in their development, acting as a teacher in childlike form. Viewed this way, no parental relationship is insignificant. Every distance, every trauma, every gesture carries a deeper meaning. For through the parents we encounter not only childhood, but often our past, our lessons, and sometimes even God Himself. And often it is precisely where it hurts. The familial rejection, the emotional coldness, the confrontation with addiction, violence, or loss. For the mind, it is cruel, yet for the soul, it is a stage on which it can learn forgiveness, self-love, or inner strength. Suffering is not a punishment, but a kind of divine invitation. Suffering is often the door through which the light enters. Modern spiritual psychology describes the same principle. In transpersonal psychology, figures like Stanislav Grof and Ken Wilber regard pain as a transformative force. Even in epigenetics, it is now evident that traumas can be passed down from one generation to the next, but they can also be consciously interrupted. So if you wonder why you were born into a difficult family, the answer might be that you are strong enough to break the cycle. A child growing up in poverty often develops compassion and determination. A person who experiences rejection can later offer comfort to others that they themselves never received. Cayce said, "What challenges you the most is what you can transform the most. Every crisis is thus not just pain, it is a choice. Do I remain in the victim role, or do I recognize the meaning behind it and begin to heal myself? For that is the path of the soul, not the perfect life, but the conscious life through the imperfections." What happens to the soul when the body dies but the next birth has not yet begun? Edgar Cayce spoke of an in-between space, a state of pure awareness where the soul looks back, reflects, heals, and prepares. He said, "After death, the soul returns to its true home, to a spiritual level that corresponds to its current development. There it encounters spiritual helpers, soul guides, and sometimes even those with whom it will be karmically connected in the next life. In a kind of life review, it recognizes where it was loved, where it was hurt, and where it failed, yet not with guilt but with clarity." Manoan modern near-death experiences confirm this retrospective and astonishing agreement. People report that they have experienced their entire lives as if in a holographic field, not as a film, but as an emotional feeling of all the consequences of their actions, how it felt for them and for others. The interim serves as a time for reorientation. Cayce described that the soul shapes its next incarnation there, including body, parents, environment, even specific challenges. Nothing is left to chance, yet everything remains open. The soul has the freedom to choose, but also bears responsibility. He said, "The soul chooses where it can grow, not where it can live comfortably. It is a sacred conversation. What lessons are still open? Which soul connections need to be healed? What do I want to recognize, feel, transform this time?" This phase can be short or very long. Some souls incarnate after just a few months, while others wait hundreds of years, depending on their level of development and readiness. Cayce spoke of different levels or spheres that temporarily serve as a home for the soul, comparable to the astral planes of Theosophy, or the Bardos of the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And at some point, the soul makes its choice. It feels drawn once again to matter and descends into a new body, a new name, a new life, yet with old memories hidden deep in its subconscious. And so the cycle begins anew, not as punishment, but as a call for completion. If our soul truly transcends many lives, what then heals the old wounds? What unravels the invisible knots that repeatedly lead us back to the same people, conflicts, and pains? Edgar Cayce provided a clear answer: forgiveness and love. He said, "Karma is the law of cause and effect, but love is the law of liberation. As long as we hold grudges against others, we carry it with us, not just emotionally, but also spiritually. Unresolved guilt, suppressed anger, old grievances. They do not remain in the past. They become new reality, illness, separation, or a new incarnation where the pattern repeats itself. Yet Cayce taught that once we forgive, truly forgive from the depths of our hearts, the energy changes. The karmic cycle is broken. What held us captive is transformed, not through justice, but through compassion." Modern research, such as that by Dr. Fred Luskin at Stanford University, in his work Forgive for Good, also shows that forgiveness has not only spiritual but also demonstrable healing effects on body and mind. People who forgive suffer less frequently from depression, chronic illnesses, or inner turmoil. Yet forgiveness does not mean I forget what has happened. It means I let go of what binds me, and therein lies the key. Forgiveness is not a weakness. It is the bravest act of spiritual growth. Love, Cayce said, is the only thing that endures through all incarnations. Not possession, not power, not knowledge, but that still all-pervading force that heals what the mind can never resolve. He said, love is the soul's memory of its divine origin. It manifests in the mother who remains despite everything, in the child who forgives even though it has been hurt, in the stranger who suddenly feels like an old friend. For love is more than a feeling. It is a state of consciousness. It is the power with which you can not only understand karma, but dissolve it. Nani, and perhaps if you forgive someone today, you are fulfilling a promise you made centuries ago to yourself, to the other, to life itself. If Edgar Cayce was right, then you are not here by chance, not in this family, not facing these challenges, but because your soul chose exactly this path to grow, not out of weakness, but out of maturity. We have seen that the soul reflects between lives and then chooses those parents, those circumstances, those trials that will help it recognize what it has yet to understand. That conflicts within the family carry karmic imprints. That love and forgiveness are not the end of a chapter, but the beginning of a new one, and that every birth, every encounter, every pain has meaning. Perhaps not a logical one, but a soulful one. Music, Cayce reminded us, no one meets you by chance. Every person in your life is a teacher or a mirror. When you realize this, everything changes. Then, from the perspective of suffering, rejection becomes maturation, and from powerlessness, a step toward inner freedom. The question is no longer, why is this happening to me? But what does my soul want to show me through this? If you look into your family today, into your relationships, into your own history, ask yourself, is there someone you should forgive? Something you can finally accept? A lesson you may have learned long ago? For perhaps this life is not about being perfect, but about being conscious, not about controlling everything, but about trusting that there is a greater plan, a plan that your soul itself has written. Perhaps while listening you felt that there is more than mere coincidence, more than just biology. Perhaps you have realized that your family, with all its wounds, is exactly what your soul has chosen, not to punish you, but to remind you of what you truly are. If you have experienced something that has profoundly shaped you, a special connection, an inexplicable feeling toward someone that transcends this life, then share it with us in the comments below. We are collecting your stories, and if there are enough, we will publish a very special ZEITGEIST video about the secret soul contracts between parents and children. If this topic has touched you, if you feel that your life is also part of a greater plan, then subscribe to this channel so you don't miss an episode. Share this video with those who are searching, who want to understand why their lives are the way they are. Because sometimes a single thought is enough to see everything differently. Until tomorrow at 6:30 p.m., your ZEITGEIST.